Wigan Athletic got through an awkward season last year. The points deduction meant that challenging for the playoffs in League One was always going to be a big ask. But this time around, no points deduction. They don't have a transfer embargo either. And Shaun Maloney's side can look to the 24-25 campaign with a little bit more ambition. They've already made some exciting signings in Calvin Ramsey being one of them, and plenty more business to come. But League One's going to get even tougher this season. So are we getting ready to challenge under Shaun Maloney and possibly get back into the Championship this season? That's what we're going to try and find out on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive, one of 72 we're doing across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already the full set uploaded for League 2 to YouTube and Spotify, so go and check those out. Get yourself subscribed, drop us a review and a comment once you're done with this one. For now, delighted to be joined by Charlie Keegan from Central Wigan. Charlie, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. This is an exciting season ahead for Wigan Athletic, right?
Yeah, it's exciting, but it's also quite terrifying seeing that it's another League One season with about 20 teams that will be pushing for the top 6. So seeing a lot of teams building their squads, especially Rotherham at the moment, the way they're building, I think it's going to be an exciting one. But it's just good to be back, though, isn't it? After it, I mean, we're not actually fully back yet. The fixture releases tomorrow, and then season doesn't start for another month or so. But yeah, no, I'm very excited to see how Wigan can do, because I think we built something really good last season. We finished very strong. We're signing some good players, so it's setting us up very nicely for next season.
Yeah, certainly is. What do you make of the work Shaun Maloney has done since taking charge? I think it was about 2/3 of the way through the Championship campaign, and obviously had the full season last year in League One.
I think it's as near to perfect as you can possibly do, and I don't really think I'm under a veil of illusion there, because knowing where the club was just days away from extinction, essentially, the owners had walked away, stopped all funding, we had nothing, staff were being released, and to see Shaun Maloney and Gregor Rioch essentially have to sell the whole project to Mike Danson and then travel up and down the country recruiting players to then build that squad for League One, our first season back, keep us safe, and do a very good job. We should have finished 10th without the points deduction, but we got 12th instead with 62 points. And then over this summer, we seem to be building very well, not just the squad, but also the infrastructure behind it. We'll obviously get into a couple of the coaches that have come in later on, but I think it's as close to perfect as you can possibly get.
Well, yeah, very impressive work, and clearly made an impression on Wigan Athletic fans. What are let's say Wigan effectively finished 10th last season because of the points you amassed, so that's where you would finish without the points deduction. What are the steps required for Wigan Athletic to go from being a top 10 side to being a top 6 side?
I think that's why you're going to have to bring in a couple more experienced players, because we know how young our squad is anyway. I think even at the moment, the average age is 22, so it's still very young. And we've lost Charlie White, Josh McGuinness, Stephen Humphreys, players who were experienced at this level. We didn't always get the best out of them in a lot of the games, but the games where they were on it, they really won us points. And I think it's very difficult to then sort of rely on Chrissy and Josh Stones, who are very talented players, relying on them a little bit just to step up and go, okay, we need top 6. We need a few more experienced players. And I think an experienced number 9, somebody who's 25 or older, maybe it's 25 to 30, somebody who's been around a little bit, knows how to score goals, sometimes can be a little bit selfish at times just to take the shot when we need it. And then maybe in the midfield as well, Babradiko, very, very young. I adore him, but he's very young. And so is Scott Smith. Their experience at this sort of level. Babradiko's first professional season was last season, and he played about 40 odd games. So somebody that maybe when the going gets tough, especially against a side like a Peterborough, somebody who's just relentless, stick an experienced centre midfielder in there just to help out. I think our backline is fine, to be honest. I think that Calvin Ramsey, Stephen Sessegnon, Jason Kerr, Charlie Hughes, I wouldn't really want to change that. Sam Tickle signing on, that's perfect. I think he just is the number 1 starter. So yeah, maybe just a little bit more experience just in the forward role and the midfield role.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of mapping out the squad earlier, Charlie, and it's a little bit difficult for me to work out what formation it's going to be because I sort of wrote it down in the ordering of a 3-4-3, but I feel like I could just as easily have written it down in the ordering of a 4-2-3-1. Do you have an inkling on what Shaun Maloney is going to want to go with next season?
we were very stuck with the 3-4-3 for a while. Or three. It was on. It wasn't. We played a three at the back essentially with wing backs, and then it kind of rotated about in the forward line. But I'm not the biggest fan when we play three at the back. But sometimes when Maloney needs to, he will do, and that's fine with me. Sometimes when you're up against a Peterborough, who you know we're just going to be relentless, stick three at the back. That's fine, just as long as we've got an outlet to move forward, which we did, and we beat them twice. So Maloney crafted that very good. But then sometimes we will do a 4-2-3-1. We'll just play a four at the back, and we'll stick. The fullbacks have to stay back. So I'm fine with that. How we set up this season, I'm not too sure, to be honest. I know Dion Rankine can play a right wing back sort of position. I think Ola Kigbe as well can kind of play a wing back system. But then when you've got a Calvin Ramsey and Steven Sessegnon, they're going to have a little bit of freedom to move forward into the midfield when we need to. But I do prefer the four at the back, if I'm honest. But obviously, I'm happy with it changing. I have full trust in Maloney that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you feeling about the structure of the club? Because I think last time I spoke to you, I think I've got this right. Gregor Riak was promoted from academy manager to sporting director. Do you think that's had a positive impact on the club?
Yeah, I think it has, and especially when we're talking about how many academy players stepped up. Gregor Riak knows the academy players better than anybody. Obviously, he's been dealing with them when he was the academy manager. I think he still has a huge hand in that. Even I'm pretty sure his name's Jake Campbell is the guy who runs the academy now in place of what Gregor was doing. But I think if you're talking about somebody who can just help Shaun Maloney identify what a good player is for Wigan Athletic, and also Maloney's only been here, like you say, over a year and a half. So he needs that kind of input from Gregor. So I think he's done a really, really good job in just making the whole transition quite seamless. And Maloney spoke a couple of times last season about young players who'd stepped up. And after 10 or 15 games, he was talking about how some of the young players, the pressures kind of got to them a little bit. And we could see that some younger players were dropping out. Like a Chris C wasn't always on the bench like he usually wasn't really coming on as much as he was. So maybe he was one of the players. And I think that comes from just Gregor's guidance of going, I know this player very well, just take him out a little bit. He will be fine. Just bring him back in. So he's the guy for the job.
Certainly is. So we've got to start with talking about Sam Tickle and getting him tied down to a long-term contract. One of the most talented goalkeepers in the country, Charlie. To get him tied down to a long-term contract, I think that's a hugely exciting thing. Not just for having Sam Tickle there, but also what that suggests for the direction that the club's heading in.
Yeah, it was one of them that I would really have loved to see him sign a contract extension, but I would have fully understood if he wanted to go up to a championship level because he is capable. And you don't always get to say that about a player who's played one professional season. Obviously, he came on he was a starter actually in the final game of our championship season against Rotherham, kept a clean sheet in that. And then to play the entirety of a League One season in your first professional season, make your debut for England under 21s, even get a clean sheet for them.
Yeah,
I think that it was far beyond any of our expectations of what he could do. And I remember when me and Dan were speaking to you, and even Dan was saying like Sam Tickle's the number one, should be the guy. And I kind of had my doubts. I was thinking, should he? Like, I know he's very talented, but like we're talking about experienced forwards, should we just have an experienced keeper they can flip flop? But no, Dan proved me wrong on that one. He was the right choice. But
you got to listen to Dan more. That's the lesson of the story, I think.
Yeah, I think I need to turn his tweet notifications on, so when he says something, I'll listen.
Absolutely.
No, Sam Tickle was fantastic last season, and you could see his confidence just grew and grew and grew. And now I know we've brought in Andy Lonergan, who is he's more of a player coach. He's not going to be. I don't even think he's going to be on the bench really. But having Sam Tickle there to be able to learn off a player like Andy Lonergan, sky's the limit of where he goes. But no, having them down till 2028, along with Charlie Hughes and Thelo Aasgaard, actually, I think they're all on long contracts as well. So
yeah,
it's some job to get them to sign on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the position you want to be in as a club, where it's like you've got your big assets tied down to long-term deals, because it means that you either keep them, or the offer's so astronomical that you can't refuse it, and then you use that money to reinvest back into the club. And I love that Wigan are in that position. You mentioned Andy Lonergan there. I agree. I think he can be a great mentor for Sam Tickle. He's had a very good career as a goalkeeper in the EFL. Do you think it also means the likes of Tom Watson and Matty Corrin can maybe get moves out on loan, possibly?
Tom Watson's the one I'm not too sure about. Matty Corrin, I think, will most likely be our starting goalkeeper for under 21s the whole season. So whether he goes out on loan, I'm not too sure. I would probably just keep him under 21s and let him learn there. Maybe do a short-term loan if we have the cover for him. Tom Watson, I think his first loan was at Mossley AFC, sort of like your non-league side. Sort of like your
Step 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah. I think he did okay there. I know he was on loan with Kai Payne, actually. They were both there. Pulled off some impressive saves that I saw. And then he went to Oxford City last season in the National League. They were relegated, but again, some good saves. But it wasn't a loan that is going to fill you with a lot of confidence. A bit like Scott Smith when he was at Torquay United. Barely got played, and I think it knocked him a little bit. So Tom Watson, if he does go out on loan, I think League Two or the Scotland Premier League or Premiership is probably where I would like him to go. Will he start? I don't think so, but I would want to see him pushing. But then do we just keep him as our number 2 and let his confidence grow there? Again, I'm not too sure. So Tom Watson's the one I'm really not sure on, but having Andy Lonergan to learn from, I think is going to be beneficial to all 3 of them, really. So I'm excited to see the development of those 3.
Yeah, I think having a backup goalkeeper who's also the goalkeeping coach, I think, is kills 2 birds with one stone, because you've got your goalkeeping coach and you've also got your safe pair of hands to come in if anything happens to Sam Tickle. So I think that's a pretty strong position, and hopefully Tom and Matty can continue to develop in whatever way Gregor and Shaun decide. So centre-back position then, Charlie. I've got 4 players down there at the moment. You got James Carragher, who's come through the academy. You've got Charlie Hughes, who's the big hitter, if you like. You've got Luke Robinson, who I think can play on the left of a back 3. I don't know about centre back in a 4. Maybe you can correct me on that. And then you've got Jason Kerr, who signed a new deal as well. But if you want to play with a back 3 at times next season, then maybe you're going to need one more.
Yeah, well, the back 3, if we do that, Sean Clare can also fill in. I'm happy with him on the right. He can do it. Luke Robinson, centre of in the 2 pairing. If he's a centre back, I'm not too sure, but I know he can play left of a 3 at centre back. I know he played that at St Johnstone quite a lot, and there was a lot of times where he was getting back and helping defend in the centre of the box, even blocking a lot of shots on the line and last-ditch challenges. So Luke Robinson can play that role. If we are going to do 2 at the back, your only starters really are Charlie Hughes and Jason Kerr, unless it's for rotation or injury. So James Carragher, did really well coming through our academy. Actually was sort of level pegging with Charlie Hughes when they were coming through, as who was going to be the better one for our first team. But I know James Carragher got a lot of injury issues. I know Jamie was actually talking about it on the overlap, and he was talking about how hard it's been for James sort of with his injuries. But I think the loan to Inverness last season seemed to do him really, really good. They were really impressed with him. I know it wasn't the best season for Inverness, but I also don't mind that, really. If a player goes out on loan and they're up against it and it's a really tough season for them, it's just, it's good development for them. So, no, I think James will be FA Cup, EFL trophy. I think he is going to be the one that will most likely play in them games. So, he's one that I'm excited to see.
Given that Jason Kerr, I imagine you'd say he had a decent season last year, wasn't necessarily outstanding. So is there an argument for bringing an additional centre-back in? Because A, if you play with a back 4, you've got someone to compete to start alongside Charlie Hughes. And B, if you play with a back 3, then you're going to need the other extra centre-back anyway, bearing in mind that James Carragher and Luke Robinson, probably good squad options, but not necessarily the ones that you'd want to be relying on if there was an injury to Charlie or Jason.
Yeah, I think if we're going to talk about a a fail-safe, yes, an experienced centre-back would be perfect. Even when Che Dunkley was leaving Shrewsbury, I was thinking, please just get him back. he's the ideal person you would want around. Jason Kerr, I worry a little bit with his injury record. And I think he only played 15 games last season because that ACL that kept him out from, I think it was the November time in the Championship when he got the ACL against Swansea, I believe it was. And that kept him out for until last season. Only came back and played about 15 league games. So yeah, Jason Kerr's injury, I hope it doesn't end up reoccurring. I know on his recovery, he ended up injuring his metatarsal and that kept him out just a little bit longer as well. So yeah, I think as a fail-safe, another centre-back would be great. But I also think that, say we do revert to a back three and we have to do that, there's nothing really to say that we can't do Charlie Hughes as a centre, Sean Clare at the right, and and Luke Robinson at the left, or James Carragher or somebody. It's not something I would want to see all the time, but I think it's there if we need to. And I think they're good enough players that we should be able to get through.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess another centre-back would be desired rather than required, if you like. So it's not necessarily the number one priority. Just talk to me in a little bit more detail about Charlie Hughes and how important you think he's going to be for next season.
He's another one that if he does put a Wigan shirt on at the start of the season, like his belief in what Shaun Maloney and Gregory are doing to help his career must be through the roof. He's one that I would just love to see him again at Wigan. And there's nothing to suggest he's going, but obviously the offers must be there. There must be some big offers. And I think I said to you the other day that Charlie Hughes could pick out a fan in the crowd if he knew the seat number. He could just ping the ball to them, no problem. The way that he dictates the game from centre-back is unlike anything I've really ever seen at Wigan before. He'll pick the ball up in a really dangerous situation and he'll just see Johnny Smith, or was Jordan Jones before he's not with us anymore. Jordan Jones or Johnny Smith, he'd see them and just ping them through. If he can't play an over-the-top ball, he'll just whiz it through the defence and put somebody in behind. And you just think, how does he see all this? Obviously, from the stands when you're looking up, you can see, oh, Jordan Jones is out there, just ping it there. But obviously, when you're at eye level on the field, it can't be that easy. And he's just doing it. He's just pinging it around. And even when he's having to defend, his ground duels and aerial duel numbers are fantastic. His last ditch challenges is fantastic. And when he was coming through in the Championship season with Jack Watmore and Jason Kerr, you could see that he was sometimes overcommitting and it was really messing us up because then Jack Watmore would have to run back and help. And I know a couple of the injuries came from that. But it's just his understanding, positional awareness, it's just increased so much. So I think that there's only one way that Charlie Hughes' career is going, and that's as Harry Redknapp would like to say, is going right to the top.
And hopefully some of that journey can be with Wigan Athletic. Again, great to have him under contract for the long term. And it's great that Wigan have been able to invest some of the budget to get these big assets tied down. So right back or right wing back spot is an interesting one because there's a few options there. But what the signing that really excites me, Charlie, is the one of Calvin Ramsey on loan from Liverpool.
Yeah, one that I wasn't too sure what to make of it when we got him. I think he's a very talented player. I remember when he was coming through sort of at Liverpool, and I'd heard of him when he was at his time in Aberdeen, and Shaun Maloney saying, oh, that's really his first meet of Calvin Ramsey. And I think he got Young Player of the Year in the Scotland Premiership in his debut season, maybe. But then I think his injuries have really hit him. I think he struggled with injuries, then he's at Liverpool, then went to Preston, struggled there with injuries, went to Bolton. I think there was a minor struggle with an injury, but I also think that Ian Evatt was very set on what he was doing, so that Ramsey just wasn't really being able to be given the time that he maybe needed. So it's all about, are the injuries going to be okay? Can he play, at least half a season as the starter or as a regular? Can he do that? If he can, great. I would probably put him over Sean Clare, but like I say, Sean Clare's your versatility one. If we need him at a centre back, I think he can do it.
I'd be stunned if Sean Clare's starting right wing back over Calvin Ramsey.
I think, yeah, I would be surprised. But it's again, if Calvin's struggling with something, I don't mind if Sean Clare plays it because he can do it. He can do the overlap very well. He can cut into the midfield absolutely fine. So Sean Clare is your fail safe. Calvin Ramsey is the one that I would really like to see.
Stephen Sessegnon there as well.
Yeah, but does he play on the left? He played on the left a little bit last season. Usually he's on the right, but we saw him on the left a little bit. If we've got Ramsey and Clare on the right, I wouldn't be too surprised if Sessegnon goes over to the left and kind of rotates a bit with Luke Robinson. Sessegnon also played a little bit of centre midfield when needed. If we needed to bulk out the midfield, Sessegnon would play in the centre role.
Well, I was actually wondering if Dion Rankin was going to be another wing back option, do you think he's going to play further forward or?
I think my understanding of it, he will play a little bit further forward. But again,
Okay.
I wouldn't be too surprised. But it's one of those that you'd rather have these more versatile players who can do wing back if they needed, or they can play forward. I think that's the way that Shaun Maloney really likes, especially when you look at Babradiko and Scott Smith, centre midfielders by trade. He'll stick him right back if needed. And he does it with Harry McHugh as well. He played right back, centre mid, played left back at some time last season before he went out on loan. So he wants those players that can move around, like Thelo Aasgaard. Usually will be a number 10. If he needs him in centre midfield, he's going to put him there and wants him to do a job. So I think you're very much seeing the Maloney style of building a team at the moment.
My feeling on Dion Rankin, though, is that I think if you're going to play as part of a front three in a 3-4-3, I think you need your wide forwards to have a real goal scoring instinct, because they're your sort of go-tos for goals, because you're going to need your central midfielders to be quite disciplined to make it work. I'm not sure that Dion Rankin's not double check this, but I don't think Dion Rankin's got a great goal scoring record from youth level. I don't think he got many goals at Exeter. So for me, I'm not sure he's really got enough of a goal scoring instinct about him to play as a wide forward in a 3-4-3. But I do think that if you played a 4-2-3-1, I think he'd be fine with one of the winger sort of spots if you had a goal scoring number 10 like Thelo Aasgaard there. So that's what I think about Dion Rankin. If I had to guess, I would say he'd play wing back in a 3-4-3, or I think he'd play out wide in a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, I think I was looking at his Chelsea record. I don't think he was setting the world alight with his goal scoring, but I think he was chipping in quite a bit. But again, it's hard to translate sort of Premier League to youth level to a senior level of football, because I think that numbers can get quite skewed in the Premier League too, as for ambition and things. But I think when I was looking at Exeter last season, I think when Rankin started and when he got injured, I'm sure Exeter were top of League One or in the top two positions.
Yeah.
And then when he came back, they were 20th or something. So I think, but I'm sure that Dimitri Mitchell also got injured, and I think a striker also got injured.
And I think this was a wing back, and then maybe a striker got injured as well. Yeah, they didn't have.
Yeah.
They had to recall a lad called Sonny Cox from Yeovil because they didn't have any centre forwards going into January. So maybe they had a striker injured or something as well.
Yeah, and I think when I saw Exeter when we played them, I thought they were a very good side, but good in the build up, very much like you can expect from a Gary Caldwell side. I just thought they had absolutely nothing up top. There was so many balls going in the box, and then just nobody was finishing them. So perhaps if Rankin had a number 9 who, like I was talking about before, a little bit selfish, somebody who will just scream, "Give me the ball," and will just take the shot and get a goal away or whatever he needs to do. Somebody's a bit more prolific, I think then we'll start to see Dion Rankin's numbers go up. I just think that his hands were a little tied at Exeter just with the players they had available to them. That's my understanding of it. But
no, I think that's a really intelligent point. I think he's certainly. Do you know what? When he first signed for Exeter, it was a loan deal initially from Chelsea, and then you got him permanently. But I definitely remember looking at some of his highlights from the development squad at Chelsea and thinking, wow, this is an incredible ball carrier, and he looks such an exciting prospect. So I'm hoping that in a certain style for Wigan and with the right players around him, he could really come alive in whatever position. I think his versatility's only going to be a strength, really.
Yeah.
So where was I? Central midfield. Then we've talked about Babradiko, Charlie, and how maybe it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you could say last season, you could say it was too many games for him, really, and it would be nice to have been able to rest him from time to time. But I almost wonder, Charlie, having had that experience of playing 40-odd games last season, would it almost feel like a bit of a step back if he all of a sudden went to not from being a key player to actually not starting so regularly? Is it almost got past the point where he needs too much of a rotation option? It's about, you played 40 games last season, try and do something similar again.
Yeah, and I think the message from Shaun Maloney did an interview recently, and it was very much, okay, you were an up and coming youth. This was a general statement to all of them, really. You're a general up and coming youth player last season, but now you're a professional. So, he wants more from them. So I really doubt that we'll see Baba take a back seat. I think that most likely it is just going to be Matt Smith and Babradiko in the midfield. Again, like we're talking about at right back as well. Can't forget Scott Smith can do that. So I think if rotation needed, Babradiko and Scott Smith will rotate a little bit, maybe as the game goes on. If we're, say, 2 or 3 goals up in a game, there's nothing really stopping us swapping a Deco out for Smith or Smith out for a Deco or something like that. So Baba's one I've got really high hopes for. And I actually made a bet with Anthony Pillin, who is the Wigan commentator. Adiko's not scored since he was 14. And so I said that if Babradiko can score a league goal before Christmas, I'll get his name tattooed. So I'm kind of hoping that Babradiko does not score before Christmas. But yeah, he's one that I think we, as Wigan fans, we kind of had to really understand what his role was, because when we had Max Power and Tom Naylor and even Chris Teehee, there were Tom Naylor was your sweeper, just get the ball, clear it by any means. I kind of expected that from Baba, and I think that was what my understanding of his role was going to be. Was I'm not expecting goals and assists from him, but I'm just expecting him to clear the ball up. But then once I saw him a bit more last season as he started to progress, I thought, well, he's a really good ball carrier. He can win the ball, no problem at the end of our box, and he will take it 50 yards up the field and play in an Aasgaard or play in a Jordan Jones or a Johnny Smith, or his assist for Charlie Wyke against Carlisle at Brunton Park. These were little glimpses of what he can actually do. And I thought, okay, I think I maybe need to give him a bit more credit of what he can do in the centre midfield role. But also when you're playing against Matt Smith is the guy, in our midfield. So I think that they complement each other very well. But again, it's their understanding of each other. So I think Adiko and Matt Smith would be my starters next season.
Well, I think possibly one more experienced option to come in if you need to, if it calls for that, but maybe someone who would just be a bit more on the fringes possibly, and something to sort of support what you've already got there, because you've already got Babradiko, like you mentioned, Matt Smith, and then Scott Smith, who are all good, really talented options. And then also you've got Callum Jones, who there was a lovely moment, I think, because he'd had an illness. I'm sure you might be able to talk about this in more detail than me, Charlie, but it was really quite heartwarming situation with Callum Jones, wasn't it?
Yeah, our under-18s captain. I think he's been with Wigan since he was about 13, maybe younger actually. But yeah, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is a form of cancer, and it obviously kept him out for a long time. He went through a lot of his chemotherapy, and he ended up last season being cleared of it. So yeah, he rang the bell and he came into the changing rooms at Wigan, and everybody applauded him when he came in. So that was a really lovely moment. And then his first game back, he also captained the under-18s back in their game. And I'm sure we won that game as well. So it's a very fitting tribute for him to come back. So yeah, he's another one that Shaun Maloney just talks very highly of. He's it's Callum Jones is our under-18 captain, lifelong Wigan fan, a bit like Scott Smith. So yeah, it's his story last season was the best of any. I know we talk about the points total that we got and they're coming back from survival, but Callum Jones' story to me just tops all of that. So.
Yeah, and you know what? I hope that he can get a few first team minutes next season, just because I think his story can be a real inspiration to everyone at Wigan Athletic, and I think that's a really positive thing for the club, that someone can face that sort of adversity and come back from it. And if you can come back from that, you can come back for anything. So I think that's a really powerful thing. So striker position then, Charlie, you've got Josh Stones and Chris Zay, who I think you'll say are two very talented strikers. But the balancing act for me, I think it's a given that you're definitely going to bring in one striker. The question is, how much do you bring in two proven senior centre forwards and maybe risk blocking the pathway for Stones and Zay, but end up having more individual proven quality up there? Or do you do what you did with Sam Tickle this time last year and say, do you know what, we're actually going to carve a pathway for Josh and Chris and actually give you a route into first team football, because that's how we're going to develop players?
For me, I remove as many blockers as many blockages as I can for Chrissy and Josh Stones. I think that Chrissy showed his ability. It's more of his technical ability on the ball, keeping it very tight when he's dribbling through, especially in the Thelo Aasgaard number 10 role. I think that's where I sort of see Chrissy a little more playing rather than an out and out striker. I think Chrissy works so well in the little pocket, but Josh Stones is just it's just what I love in a number 9. Just somebody just stick him on the defenders. He's going to cause them problems all afternoon, and just have him running around, feed him the balls through, because he's a strong lad as well. So he's quick, he's strong. I think he showed all this at his time at Oldham before he got his injury. He's very, very good up there for them. So I think if we are going to bring in a striker, which I know Maloney said a lot that he wants, I think, bring in an experienced striker, but leave the pathway for Josh Stones. Have him on the bench as much as possible. Bring him on, get him minutes. Start him in the EFL Trophy if we need to, or in the FA Cup. I think that just the way that Josh Stones carries himself as well, the confidence that you can see he's got in himself, I don't think we should put any blockages in front of that. Just let him have his season that he needs to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully they can have a real breakthrough season. Thelo Aasgaard, Charlie, you mentioned him as another one of your top talents. He is someone who's been around the first team scene for 4 years now, but he's still quite young. He's represented Norway at various age groups, so that shows that internationally they see a lot in him. But I'm just wondering, if you do play when you play 3-4-3 as opposed to 4-2-3, we know in a 4-2-3-1 he's going to play as a number 10, right? Do you prefer him in central midfield in a 3-4-3, or do you prefer him on the left or front three? How do you sort of look at it?
If we're going to play that system, I would play him left of a front three, if I'm honest. I think that our centre midfield coverage is fine, especially if we're bringing another experienced one. I don't think Aasgaard should really have to be in that position, but throughout his career, I mean, he's 22, only just 22. I think he turned 22 in May, and he's played over 100 senior appearances for Wigan. So he's been relied on, and I think that his career, you've seen that, is kind of peaked and troughed a lot, but last season with the season he needs to have. But we've seen so many times how cutting him from the left wing, I mean, I wouldn't have him as an out-and-out winger, but I would have him just somebody who can sit sort of on the end of on the triangle, on the corner of the box, sorry. And we can see that his long-range shot, I don't know if you remember I can't remember the game who it was against, but Luke Chambers, the nice little back heel flick to Aasgaard, and then he just turned from outside the box and swept it into the far corner. The one against Blackburn Rovers, third round of the FA Cup years ago, he did that. So his long-range shot is absolutely fine to play on that left of a front three role. So that's where I would kind of see him. But again, I think the pecking order for your number 10 most likely is Aasgaard, the starter. I think that he should be the guy. Chrissy just behind him. But then you've got Joe Adams who can do it. Kai Payne is coming through. So there's a lot of youngsters there who can sort of be able to get a few minutes next season if Aasgaard needs a little break, and say in the EFL Trophy or in the EFL Cup or even an early round FA Cup game. I think they're your kind of players that you will start to see come through.
Do you know what I like about Joe Adams, Charlie? I watched him play for Morecambe last season, and I didn't see a huge amount from him technically. So I think he's definitely got areas that he can improve. But what I loved about him was that if he every time he gets the ball, he always wants to run at opponents, and I think that's a great mentality to have. And it didn't always actually come off for him on that particular time, but I see a core mentality where it's like he's not phased if he does happen to give the ball away as a result of trying to make things happen. So it's like again and again and again, and he's just determined. And to have that level of confidence where I don't care if the odd thing goes wrong, I'm going to keep doing my thing, I think that's a really admirable starting point. Now obviously he's got to try and work with Shaun Maloney, and hopefully he can refine his game. But I do see real potential there, because it's the players who aren't knocked in terms of their confidence who end up getting where they want to get to, and I think Joe Adams can do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, actually, because I think that's where Chris C needs to just be a little careful that Joe Adams can maybe overtake him in the pecking order, because as much as I rate Chris C's ability on the ball and sort of tenacity, I do think he loses his head a little bit. And there was a few times last season where he'd lose the ball and all of a sudden it's two hands on the guy, we'll drag him down or we'll jump in the air and overly aggressively shoulder barge. And I just think You don't need to do that. You've got the ability and you've got the skill to get the ball, run, pass it off, run through the defense if you need to. We don't need to always resort to this. And the odd time, I don't mind it. You know, if you're trying to ruffle feathers, like a Callum McManaman, got all the ability on the ball that he needs and will ruffle feathers when he needs to. Chris C's kind of taken that a little too far sometimes. So I think that's where, when the back's up against it, if we just need somebody, you know, to keep the head, just keep going and keep going. If you're going to look to the bench and Joe Adams and Chris C is there, Chris C needs to make sure that Maloney's not the one choosing Joe Adams.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, makes it really exciting from a competition point of view. You've also got Callum McManaman, who can play one of those wide spots as well. He signed on for another year to be possibly a bit of a mentor type figure as well around the place. But talking of the wide positions, you've also signed Michael Olakigbe on loan from Brentford. Now, I wasn't able to get a huge steer on Olakigbe from his loan at Peterborough last season because they had Kwame Poku and Ephron Mason-Clark, who are two of the best wide players in the league. So quite difficult to get in ahead of those two. I don't suppose you've been able to get anything on Olakigbe and what sort of player he's going to be and what he might be able to bring to Wigan.
I think it's one of them, a bit like Dion Rankin during his youth time at Chelsea. I think during Olakigbe's youth time at Brentford, I think he really, really impressed there and was sort of one of the standout players in their youth setup. But yeah, I agree that when he went to Peterborough, so hard to get a read on him, especially he got his red card against Exeter, I think, a second yellow, and then he ended up missing a few games. And then at that point, you know, Darren Ferguson had already chosen who he wanted to play, and became very hard for Olakigbe to sort of get minutes. So yeah, it's a very hard one to get a read on him. Maloney said that he's been following his career for a long time anyway. He knows that he can play on the left and on the right, can play more attacking, more defensive if he needs to. So one of those versatile players that, again, like a Dion Rankin, I think the kind of a mirror image, you know, very, 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 very pacey players. Maybe just need a little bit of help with end product and just the little, just the final bits, I think. So Olakigbe is one that I don't expect to see a lot, but I expect him to learn a lot from your likes of Callum McManaman, who I do think will be transitioning more into a player-coach role. Andy Lonergan, obviously, player-coach of the keeper. McManaman can be that for the more attacking outfield players. So yeah, Olakigbe, not too sure. One of them that, okay, yeah, we've signed him. I just want to be able to see what he can bring, because there's not a lot that not a lot that I understand. But talking about Dan Stacey on his Talking Wigan, he's done a brilliant article on Welcome to Wigan, Olakigbe. So anybody needs to go and watch that and read that. So that's really good.
Absolutely. Dan provides some excellent insight on the Tics, so be sure to get following Talking Wigan. Where am I in the squad? How many more additions do you think you're going to be looking at, Charlie?
I think 3 would set us up very nicely. And I think that's just going to be centre-back, centre midfield, striker. I'm happy with that. If the centre-back and the centre midfielders, I think if they do come in, I think it's more going to be your experienced journeymen who probably know they're not going to be playing a lot of minutes, but will be there to help the younger ones out and just be there to sort of boost in the squad. So I don't want anybody coming in who's 27 and expects to play every single game, because then I just think that's going to cause a lot of friction and things. So how you identify that, I don't know. I know that our recruitment is very good anyway, so hopefully we've got somebody like that. But I just think if we're talking about strengthening for next season, that's the 3 areas I would like to kind of see.
Is there the danger with that squad building strategy, though, Charlie, that you find yourself short of peak age performers? Because I mean, we can probably treat Sam Tickle and Charlie Hughes for the purposes of this as peak age performers, even though they're very young, because they are so talented that you just have to put them in that category. But and you know, maybe Calvin Ramsey could come into there as well, and Baba Radiko and what have you. But I'm just wondering, I don't see many players who in this squad who you'd look at and say they're in the absolute prime of their careers. Do you think that? Do you look at that and say there's a nice blend there of youth and experience, or do you look at it and think actually we need players, 1 or 2 players who are really at their absolute peak?
I kind of see it more as we've got a nice blend at the moment. Yeah. My worry is injuries and when they start to creep in, because they will, and that's my worry. I think taking Thelo Aasgaard out of the squad for a peak age performer isn't the right move. I think that Aasgaard, can have a season where he scores 10 plus goals and, gets the assists that he needs to. I think that his career path has been built into that. And I think that we shouldn't stop that before it gets to it, because I think it's very much coming. Johnny Smith started the season with his injury concerns, but finished very, very strong. So I think that Johnny Smith's going to be such a key member for our squad. I'm just looking through the list now.
Is Johnny Smith a top 6 League One player, Charlie?
I think there's the ability in him. Whether he's proving it right now, I'm not too sure. But I think that he's just one of them players that, again, you just give him the ball and he'll just nick it around the midfielder and he'll just charge at the defence. But it's his long range shooting, a bit like Aasgaard's getting his locker. Johnny Smith only scores screamers. He can't just tap it in from 2 yards out. He's getting the ball and he's leathering it and he's going in. So he's just a little bit of a different outlet, but we have to find players that work better with him. And I think that's where Josh Stones comes in, and hopefully eventually another number 9 is, if they can really pressure the defence and just sort of push them back and allow space for Aasgaard and Johnny Smith to work in, I think we're going to see that partnership really thrive next season, just because the ability to shoot from long range, it's going to cause defences a lot of problems, and they're going to have to not only provide a block for Matt Smith to do his thing, but also then for Thelo Aasgaard and Johnny Smith to do their thing, and then a number 9 to do his thing. So I think if we can get this right, we can be... my big problem last season is, I'm just looking at last season's stats, we're 22nd overall for total shots. Only Cambridge and Burton took less than us. I think we're 20th for total shots on target. Cheltenham, Shrewsbury, Cambridge and Burton only had less than us. So that's been our real big problem. But I think if you can get Johnny Smith and Aasgaard in a little bit more space, those shots are going to go up. And obviously that hopefully will end up leading to more goals. They've got the ability to do it. So that was my problem, is we weren't taking our chances enough. And Johnny Smith does that.
I would say sometimes the idea that you take more shots and you'll score more goals, I kind of do get it, because on a simplistic level that does work. But I also think you've got to focus on creating the right shooting opportunities.
Yeah.
So so Johnny Smith might hit a belter 1 in 20, but then those other 19 shots, are they you're sort of wasting an opportunity to maybe create a better opportunity? So that's what I would wonder a little bit about. I think you've got to have a clear process for creating chances, and then if the ball comes back and there's a good shooting opportunity, that's one thing. But I think to say we're going to work the ball into positions where we'll just shoot randomly from outside the box, I don't know. I'm not sure that's necessarily the way to go, but we'll see. I can certainly see that it's a strength that those two have. So if we're looking at building a top 6 first 11, if we assume everyone stays fit, if we were to go for a 4-2-3-1, you'd say Sam Tickle, definitely. You'd say Calvin Ramsey, huge potential. Charlie Hughes, huge potential. Possibly another centre-back, but if not, Jason Kerr, if he stays fit, can do a job. And you've got Stephen Sessegnon, left-back. I would think maybe the left centre-back and left-back are 2 areas, if you play a back 4, that could possibly be upgraded. But they can do a job. Adiko and Smith are good options in midfield, very talented. You got Aasgaard in the 10, and then maybe a couple of wide forward. And then you definitely need another striker. So for me, I definitely see 5 or 6 players that I look at and think, I'm really happy with that. Up top, I think is definitely an area to strengthen, and then I probably see another two or three areas where you think, could you upgrade there?
Yeah, I think your left back as well. I'm wondering whether Luke Robinson takes the start over Sessegnon. Maybe Sessegnon just gets it just on experience and that kind of thing. But I think Luke Robinson, I think he had a very good season with St. Johnstone. That's one that I'm not 100% sure about. But forward role, we just need that extra number 9. And I know we've got Leo Graham, but he's 18 and he's only been playing with our under 18s and under 21s. So he's looks a very good young player, but we only just signed him from Blackburn midway through last season. So, not Blackburn, sorry, we signed him from Bolton midway through last season. So he obviously needs a lot more time. Same as Elijah Riggion. I think he's 17. Looks very good young player, signed a professional contract, is nowhere near the first team at the moment, but obviously hopefully we'll get there. So
Sure.
yeah, number 9, another experienced centre mid would be nice, and then that just another centre back maybe would be quite good. But again, I might be surprised by James Carragher. Who knows? Who knows really where his level is at the moment? So
it's an interesting dynamic of the squad, because I think the 5 or 6 sort of I'll call them known quantities, if you like, that they're going to be good enough. I think there's a lot where there's probably from what I can see, about 10 to 15 players who could easily shoot up and become a top 6 player next season. But there's also a kind of maybe a hint of jeopardy about whether some of those players are going to make that step up. So it's like if say 10 of those 15 players all shoot up simultaneously, then that's really exciting, and you've got you could have a really good squad with some of the recruitment that's coming in. But there's also a danger that they don't progress at the rate that you're hoping for, and then you might end up having half a top 6 side and then half a side that's not quite there. So that's kind of that's like a bit of an apprehension that I have, maybe.
Yeah, and I think we were very blessed when we'd lost a lot of our squad, that our academy set up in the under-21s had had sensational season in the under-21s. I think we're only beaten by Sheffield United's under-21s in the league, who are one of the best in the country. And then I think it was Hull beat us on goal difference on the final day to progress through to the second round stages of the professional development league. So our under-21s were a very tight unit.
Yeah.
And we were blessed that when we kind of did lose everything, we had these players to step up, and they just exceeded all our expectations. So yeah, I think that I don't think the step up of the young players is going to be as big as it was for this group that have just come through. I'm not expecting Kai Payne to come in and all of a sudden be, an outstanding young player who's going to be touted for Premier League. I think he's going to be a very solid player, but I think it's just the expectation of that is going to be a little bit different with this next group.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think, again, it's just that balancing act, and hopefully the club can get it right. So with that in mind, Charlie, expectations for next season. Do you think, is it possible for Wigan to have a good season by making further stylistic and developmental and cultural progress and finishing 7th, say? Or do you think top 6 playoffs are the minimum expectation and we should be very ambitious?
I mean, obviously, like all Wigan fans are going to have their own different expectations. For me, I just want to see progress, whether that is moving up to 9th, moving up to 8th, 7th, or even to the top 6. That's where I want to be. I'd be happy enough if, we just have the progress, because I think in the last 20 years, barring our 8 years stay in the Premier League, we've only stayed in a league for 2 consecutive years, and it's just been champions or relegation. We've flip-flopped a lot, and it's just now we just want the stability of it. So I'm very happy with the direction that the club's going in, but I don't want us to go too far too soon, because we did that last time and it came around to bite us. Yes, the ownership wasn't the best to take us forward, but I think that also we're talking about the young squad, and you're looking at, are some players top 6 worthy, are they not? I think that if we were to go up to the Championship, this kind of squad, that is a massive overhaul of a squad you've got to do, and I don't think that'd be too beneficial. So if I've got to put my sort of footballing intelligence head on, I just want.
You've always had it on, Charlie. You don't need to put it on.
I want progress. I don't want to overshoot, and I don't want us to burn ourselves out by going, we need top 2, we need top 6. There's going to be some games that we'll lose and be humbled, and that's totally fine as long as we carry on the path we are. And yeah, it'd be nice to finish top 10 again, but like we were saying at the start, it's so competitive, this league. It's going to be next season. So if we are in the top 10, that's a huge achievement for me, and I'd be happy to just see us there. So I think that'd be great.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. So with the reasons to, let's say the target is top 6, if it's not necessarily the expectation, target's top 6, what are the reasons, to condense everything we've talked about in this podcast so far, big reasons to believe that you'll meet those ambitions?
Shaun Maloney is my number 1. I think that is just understanding of how we need to set up for a game, substitutions in the game to be able to see it out. We don't always get it right, but I think that he gets it right more often than not. His connection with the players, getting the very best out of a player and you see that with Sam Tickle and Charlie Hughes, who've obviously signed on a little bit longer, and Jason Kerr signing his extension. I know we just lost out to Jordan Jones, I think just purely based on wages, and we can't blow our wage structure out the water just for one player.
I think someone like Dion Rankin has probably a higher ceiling than maybe Jordan Jones had.
Yeah, and I think that's potentially the smart move. Is Jordan Jones was getting onto the back end of his career anyway. Brilliant player, one of the best in our side last season. I would have loved him for next season, but obviously it's not worked out. But then we signed Dion Rankin, so I'm happy. We've made a very sensible replacement that hopefully in 2 or 3 years we'll really see the benefits of. So I think that the way that Maloney's building this squad and the backing he's got from a lot of the players, that goes a very, very long way. And I think we've seen last season a couple of the players that perhaps in games would just go missing, just wouldn't really run for the ball, wouldn't do what Maloney wants. And you could see that was frustrating, and they were kept out for a little bit. We've weeded them ones out now. So next season, I think the expectation that Maloney wants from the players is a lot higher. And I think the players will give a bit of a higher output for him because everything's gone right for him so far. So there's no reason not to believe in him now.
So reasons for doubt. Would you share any of my reservations about whether you're going to have a full 11 of players who are ready to compete at the top of the table? Do you share that, or would you have another reason for doubt? Or
no, I fully share it. And I think that, as much as these young ones have really impressed us, once we've gone up against a lot of seasoned pros, I want to look back at the say the Cheltenham game against the Darrell Clark side when he's set up. They're good age of players in that squad, experienced players, a lot of seasoned pros in this the lower leagues. And the way you had Darrell Clark setting them up, he knew exactly how to set that team up, and we really struggled against that. And next season, I remember an old saying Paul Cook used to say it was an unforgiving league. And I think next season is going to be the pinnacle of it, because you make one mistake, Peterborough are going to go in and score. Rotherham will come in and score 2 against you. So if they're going to target some of our younger, more inexperienced players as going, the game plan is go down this left side or go down this right side or do this, go in for set pieces, I think we really need to be switched on. And I worry about that a little, just with the age and the experience of the players, their understanding of game management and seeing it out and making the right choice. That's where I worry a little bit.
That makes sense. So too early for a prediction then, Charlie. Give me a number between 1 and 10 based on to denote your level of optimism right now for the season ahead.
As in 10 highest for optimism.
10 most optimistic, yeah.
I'll go with an 8. I think that'll be bumped up to 9 once we sign a number 9. And then obviously a 10 once we see our fixture list come out tomorrow. And hopefully I want Stockport at home on the first day. I used to live near Stockport. I used to go and see them a couple of times, and their story from National League North all the way through to now is brilliant. So I think it's not the DW anymore. The Brick Community Stadium will be bouncing for that one. So hopefully we can get Stockport on the first day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to the fixtures tomorrow. That's crept up on me, that one has. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me, Charlie. It's been great to get your insight on the Latics. Be sure to go and follow Charlie at Central Wigan and his personal account at Charlie Keegan. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive on Wigan Athletic, and we'll see you again very soon.